Welcome to the chaos sector. We were wondering about the initial source of the Linda Lane surveillance being leaked, and there was one source that has been mentioned frequently. A channel named Powerpuff-3 apparently was the original source of the footage being leaked out. Now, we did a bit of digging, and although it appears to be a true crime channel, there isn't any content on the channel. It says, quote, "Sometimes you need to take justice into your own hands," unquote. But the date in which the creator joined was around the same time the footage had started to circulate. They joined July of 2023, which is the same time frame we estimated the surveillance was circulating. 7 months ago was the common date of the upload on most of the surveillance footage of several channels. So that time frame aligns up. But I find it quite strange that they state they will take justice into their own hands and has deleted the Linda Lane surveillance from their channel. There is nothing to track, examine, research, but for some odd reason, we came across none other than Get a Clue in several videos. Not to drag this out, but Get a Clue apparently sent an email to Ann Taylor and a private investigator. Let me tell everyone how this works. You don't attempt to communicate with attorneys, law enforcement, and definitely not the FBI involving a murder case, which is being covered up. Do you honestly think you have information or evidence that they don't have? Ann Taylor already knows Koberger has been framed. Heck, he basically said it himself, regarding the DNA found on the knife sheath not being from him. The prosecution failed to provide the identities of the additional 3 males. DNA samples discovered at the home. Taylor is just waiting for the prosecution to shoot themselves in the foot in trial. Oh, by the way, we never threatened Get a Clue's wolf dog, dog wolf, or whatever it is. Nowhere in our videos did we threaten his wolf dog or even him, so don't know where that came from. What I did find a bit creepy was how Get a Clue had a thumbnail of a guy holding a dead wolf by the neck, with blood pouring out of its head. Now that was very graphic. A bit dark, are we? A bit violent? Let's explain the difference. There is a difference in being angry, which can start to seep out, such as with the chaos from someone being violent, which can start to seep out in how they behave. Displaying that dead wolf when we never threatened your dog wolf indicates there was some violent tendencies just wanting to come out of Get a Clue. Anger doesn't mean you're violent, but someone who is violent definitely has anger. He knew we never threatened his wolf dog, so why would he even post that thumbnail and claim the chaos was threatening Ella, his pet wolf dog? Yeah, we're calling it a wolf dog. Get over it. Now look at the sick mind of Get a Clue, fabricating a threat the chaos never made against his wolf dog, just so he can display a photo of a dead wolf with blood all over the place. Think about how sick you would have to be. And furthermore, why would you even display such a graphic image, even if someone did threaten your dog wolf? Why would you basically show what would happen to the wolf dog as a result of that threat? You see, that's not dark humor. That's just dark. And who is the tyrant in the photo? Is that Get a Clue hunting the cousin of his precious Ella, yet is glorifying killing wolves for fun? We needed to show this thumbnail, but we at least had the respect for the wolf to blur it out. Don't tell me he's running around murdering wolves and then has the nerve to claim someone is threatening his pet wolf dog or dog wolf or whatever breed it is. How about capturing them and domesticating them, Just like the first species of dogs were from that very ancestor of wolves. Oh no, let's just murder them for fun. What he is referring to, which indicates he doesn't have much wisdom, is the wolf and the blade. It's an old tale about a wolf that saw blood on a blade and started licking it. Of course, because it's a blade, the wolf cut its tongue, but the more the wolf licked the blade, the more its tongue got cut deeper, and the more blood poured, and of course the more the wolf kept licking the blade. It's basically a lesson on self-inflicted harm one does to themselves without realizing it. Since we called you a wolf in sheep's clothing, that's how we tied it all together, Anyway, now where in that story does the chaos threaten your wolf dog? His misinterpretation of that story, no wait, I'm pretty sure some of his supporters have heard of that story. So why didn't they correct him on that before he went around claiming the chaos was threatening his dog wolf? We don't know anything about your personal life, and don't care to know anything about your personal life nor your wolf dog. But to accuse us of threatening your pet wolf is wrong, and to show a dead wolf held by the neck of a hunter should have been disturbing to see for his audience. Now, we never looked at that video, but in searching for Powerpuff, these Substack articles were examined. And this Get a Clue is a snooper, see? We have to expose it. Now, on their little Substack page, they are slandering the chaos, but on their YouTube channel, they use terms like they, or allude to the chaos. Because he knows we will definitely kick his door down and point the flashlight on him in his darkness. Quote, "This is classic disinformation meant to misdirect and discredit intelligent analysis. I will automatically ban anyone who suggests this channel to me again. I don't trust it," unquote. So he threatens to ban his viewers for suggesting he check out the chaos, yet behind closed doors, he is secretly watching all the content, especially more now since we're addressing him. That basically says, go support the chaos then, because I'm banning you if you keep referring me to that channel. The crazy thing about it is he will still view the chaos anyway, so what's the point of threatening to ban those viewers for referring you to the channel? Oh, he wants to do it in secret. Remember, when there's secrecy, there's conspiracy. He watches the content, keeping track of what is being broken down. Then to gaslight his audience, he claims the chaos is presenting wild and outrageous speculations and theories. Even his viewers know the chaos is legit. That's why they referred him to the channel. Get a Clue despises the chaos. We don't actually despise him, though. We just call him out for being a conspirator. Nothing personal. But in secret, he knows our theories are as close as you can get to the truth, without knowing the truth. Discrediting the chaos is, you guessed it, damage control. Disinformation meant to misdirect and discredit intelligent analysis? That's grand. Really, this is coming from someone who claims to spot a white Hyundai Elantra, yet is claiming it's not a 2015 model. This is coming from someone who claims the suspect's vehicle was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, based on what the FBI stated, yet also claims that vehicle somehow disappeared after leaving that area. I guess the vehicle was, dumped off at the local car auction or some shit. Or, get this, was literally disassembled and all the parts were sent to be melted down and molded into new parts for another Hyundai Elantra. And to make matters worse, is agreeing with the very FBI who clearly tracked a 2015 Hyundai Elantra, which was the very fucking vehicle of the defendant you claim is innocent. You're not intelligent, because if you were, you wouldn't agree with anything the FBI stated in this case. You would bypass it all and do your own investigating. Meaning you extract what they say and use it against them. Because since you've been around long enough to know the FBI was tracking Kohberger, why would you adhere to anything they say, even if it appears they're describing a different year of the Hyundai Elantra? Get a Clue claims that the suspect's vehicle, a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, disappeared from the face of the earth, apparently. But the FBI spotted this vehicle from the neighbor's camera, right? So they spotted it enter and exit the neighborhood, and wherever it went after leaving that neighborhood, they had to be spotted by other cameras before reaching their destination, right? So, how does the FBI lose that vehicle? Get a clue. You stated the vehicle was a, quote, burnt-out husk, meaning the vehicle was basically destroyed, right? Well, somebody had to spot this. If they tracked a white Hyundai Elantra all the way in Oregon, for fuck's sake, surely this burnt-out husk would have been tracked. Oh, but somehow the FBI just couldn't find it, and lo and behold, a 2015 model is the new suspect's vehicle, which the FBI tracked. So the so-called FBI expert identified a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra as the alleged killer. But somehow, they changed the years to 2011 to 2016, and then end up tracking a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra. If Get a Clue claims that the white Hyundai Elantra spotted in the Linda Lane surveillance is not the defendant's vehicle, being Kohberger, you need to look in the mirror, sir, because you would be actually claiming it was Kohberger's vehicle. Mind you, Get a Clue stated he wanted to prove Kohberger was guilty. Now this would be by examining the Linda Lane surveillance to spot a white Hyundai Elantra. Oh, but it's not a 2015 model. It's not the defendant's vehicle. Oh, but I will range the vehicle from 2011 to 2020. What if the so-called FBI expert had identified a 2011 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra initially? You would be fucked because you couldn't use the 2011 to 2013 model excuse to manipulate your viewers into thinking you're claiming it's another white Hyundai Elantra. Do you think this is intelligent analysis? You can't read between the lines. like not knowing what we meant by the phrase light bulb at night, or not understanding the wolf and the blade story. You're playing clueless to protect your intentions. This is coming from someone who claims to spot a Ford Fusion, yet doesn't use intelligent analysis to conclude that that is the same Ford Fusion of the unmarked cruiser. And the kicker to all of this is Get a Clue is alluding to Kohberger being framed, but won't say it. That's a form of misdirection, as you don't clarify anything, despite your so-called intelligent analysis. We see right through you. You're not actually seeking the truth in this case. You're siding with those who believe Kohberger was framed, because you already know that's the best position to take. A wolf in sheep's clothing, as the saying goes. Because the more evidence is revealed, the more those who claim he is guilty will either be fooled or was a part of the conspiracy to push the narrative he was guilty. Double talking, a blabbermouth as we mentioned. On YouTube, Get a Clue is very careful not to speak about the chaos. But on his little Substack, he assumed the chaos doesn't waste time in those threads, and he's right. But your suspicions are leading the chaos to you without us actually, well, following you. It's a form of justice, my friends. We are the blade, you are the wolf. You understand? You thought you could lick the blade because you saw blood on it. That represents the wars we have fought before you even thought about investigating. Decided to lick the blade, snoop around, watch us in secret, and cut yourself. Your blood confused you, and you kept licking the blood off the blade, not realizing you had been exposed by the blade, and just kept drawing to the chaos. Because you know we know, you're not genuine. It's suicidal to continue to lick the blade, but you have no choice. Your nature is of bloodlust. You are a wild and untamed wolf that doesn't realize the consequences of its actions. See, an experienced wolf would sniff and inspect the sharpness of the blade, and despite it having blood on it, would trot away and leave it be. But the inexperienced wolf, eager to feed, goes in without caution, not realizing the blade is dangerous. We live and we learn, right? Going back to the Ford Fusion issue, Truth and Transparency apparently, quote, requested that body cam footage. Now, the Ford Fusion is in another area at 3:32 a.m., but I noticed something fishy about that body cam footage. 1. Two guys have stolen a sign, which looked a bit staged in my opinion. 2nd, Charlie Brown, nickname for the guy in the sweater, isn't that the same guy that was hugged up with the chick in the white coat at the grub truck? Was that his girlfriend? Now he would rather be out committing juvenile crimes instead of spending time with her? Or even if it wasn't his girl, you're out stealing signs on a Saturday night? Like 10-year-olds. It doesn't add up to me. This smells like a diversion. This was around the time the murders had taken place, and the unmarked cruiser had come to the, quote, scene of the crime, I believe on Main Street, near the Corner Club. We stand corrected, partially. Now, Truth and Transparency claims they cut the body cam footage short, as it ends around 3:37 a.m., and says keep that in mind. Did you ask for the full version of the body cam footage, then? We need truth and transparency from law enforcement. We need the entire body cam footage. Perhaps they cut it short because the next call was back to the neighborhood in which the Ford Fusion/unmarked cruiser was spotted circling Queen Road Apartments around 4:07 a.m. Yeah, they would cut that part out of the body cam footage for sure. And the thing is, they could have gotten there earlier than 4:07 a.m. They were done with those kids near Main Street. Nothing else needed to be done there. Give them a ticket, a warning, whatever, and move on. I noticed, though, the guy in the blue jacket is not present in that body cam footage. You guys remember the guy in the blue jacket and blue jeans holding the flashlight for the officer, right? Where is he at this time? Is he a plainclothes officer? Because he was the only one actually in plain clothes. The other officers are actually in uniform. Was he the so-called intern or ride-along from the previous body cam footage for the noise complaints at the victim's home? There was another individual with those officers asking questions and such. In the Main Street body cam footage, I don't see him anywhere, not standing to the side nor in the back seat of the vehicle. I would tend to think he would get out and kind of observe, maybe he was an intern of some sort, and his night was done after the Banfield body cam footage. Okay, we can see that as a possibility, but that entire incident seems to be a diversion because this is the time frame the housemates were being attacked or murdered. The same unmarked cruiser comes to this location as someone called about a sign being stolen. Who would have called the cops in this scenario? To be honest, there's mainly college students up at this time of night, So did another college student call the cops. If they did, it was to pull the cops away from the area the crime had been committed. Mind you, we assume the unmarked cruiser drove off after the citations, but someone was keeping an eye on their movement in relation to their location to the crime scene. Remember again, Charlie Brown was at the grub truck in the presence of 2 of the victims. Let's be honest here. Most of those college students knew those housemates were in trouble. So when word got out, Charlie Brown and his sidekick created a diversion near Main Street to pull the unmarked cruiser away from that area. He also had a bruise on his forehead as well, perhaps got in a fight regarding the diversion. The point here, creating a diversion of, quote, frat boy tomfoolery, was a way to keep the officers' attention for some time, even if it was to hold them long enough so the killers could leave the area. Anywho, Get a Clue claims that the unmarked cruiser couldn't have circled the Queen Road apartments during the 3 a.m. hour because it had a call around 4:15 a.m. The call had to be soon after they finished with the kids in Bandfield, not around 4:15 a.m. Where's the Ford Fusion in the Linda Lane surveillance Get a Clue claims to identify? Would you please trace an outline of that vehicle in the surveillance like you did with the Hyundai Elantra? You have to come to the logical conclusion that that Ford Fusion is the same unmarked cruiser. I mean, use your common sense here. Someone called the cops about a sign being stolen. Officers come to the scene like gangbusters, ready to take down the hardened criminals. But a massacre had taken place soon after that unmarked cruiser was there, and yet they knew nothing of it? Come on. Although we suggest neighbors didn't say anything about the murders. Somebody called. Maybe Enon Harsh, Dot, heck, maybe the next door neighbor called because they skipped town the next morning. Although the majority of the neighborhood kept quiet, there was someone who felt the need to call the cops, and the unmarked cruiser came back. I don't believe the officers were involved in the actual murders, but they knew what happened that night. That's the point. See, the problem we have here is Get a Clue claims to spot a Ford Fusion in his so-called evidential analysis. Let me simplify this problem so everyone can see why we keep addressing this. Let's say you have stabbings. That occurs within the 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. time frame. A light silver Ford Fusion, which was driven by police officers, was spotted in the neighborhood of the stabbings, approximately 15 to 20 minutes prior to the stabbings. In surveillance, a Ford Fusion is seen circling an apartment complex around 4:07 a.m. near the victim's residence. Now, if we do not add anything to this report, what would you assume here? You would assume that the officers had been notified about the stabbings at some point, and that's why they returned to the neighborhood. You wouldn't assume it's possibly another Ford Fusion. Your brain would immediately think of the unmarked cruiser, which was just in the neighborhood moments before the stabbings. That is this case, the same scenario, and this is what Get a Clue is avoiding. But we would like to know, where in the surveillance does he spot the identification of the Ford Fusion? He never traced an outline of this vehicle, right? Show the Ford Fusion. That vehicle is just as important as the alleged suspect's vehicle because it's the same make and model of the unmarked cruiser in the neighborhood the night of the murders. Get a Clue's unwillingness to elaborate on this specific vehicle indicates he doesn't want to acknowledge that the unmarked cruiser was physically there during the time frame the murders had occurred. Now, why would he be apprehensive in pointing that out? Going back to the questions, why are you claiming to spot a Ford Fusion when you know everyone would assume it's the same unmarked cruiser? On top of that, we'll not address the possibility that it's the same unmarked cruiser regardless of when it was physically there. Well, if it's the same unmarked cruiser, this means the authorities were notified about the murders regardless of being on Main Street around 3:30 a.m. See, it doesn't change anything really because a Ford Fusion being spotted at 4:07 a.m. in surveillance is the unmarked cruiser, and their presence there proves they were notified about the murders. Now, Get a Clue won't present this, which is literally evidential analysis. We were basically led back to Get a Clue by an algorithm because searching for Powerpuff throughout the internet led us to Get a Clue on Substack. Yes, we were searching for any link to this Powerpuff individual or individuals and came across an article from Get a Clue on Substack. It was about the Linda Lane surveillance. Even TikTok had a video of Get a Clue. The algorithm is directing us to a conspirator. We were done with Get a Clue, but he's involved somehow. That's why the algorithm led us to him. Powerpuff joined in July of 2023. That's when the surveillance came about. Get a Clue joined November of 2022, but didn't make a video until June of 2023, but was on other platforms. Perhaps Powerpuff and Get a Clue are working together? Come to think about it, let's go back to him claiming to spot a Ford Fusion at 4:07 a.m. That vehicle is definitely not visible enough to identify a make and model. So how did Get a Clue identify it as a Ford Fusion then? Could it be that the very vehicle alleged to be a white Hyundai Elantra is actually the Ford Fusion? I mean, that's the only visible vehicle or vehicles in that time frame. Now our claims that the vehicle was edited to appear to be a white Hyundai Elantra is subjective. We came to that conclusion based on how there seemed to be a visible edit of the vehicle. As the vehicle creeps forwards, body frame or the window shape appeared elongated, like it was being stretched. Mind you, we never saw the window shape until it reaches a certain point, which is the center point of the highest visibility of the vehicle. And that's when the visual oddity occurred. Perhaps Get a Clue is claiming to spot a Ford Fusion as a subliminal reference to that vehicle, being the Ford Fusion. But that would mean he has knowledge of the editing and knew which vehicle was originally there before the editing. Where is the Ford Fusion spotted, sir? The only vehicle visible to be identified is the alleged Hyundai Elantra. Prove your claims. You so-called prove there was a white Hyundai Elantra, right? Show the Ford Fusion. Point that out. Trace an outline of that vehicle by vehicle identification. Never mind, I'll just point out there's a white Hyundai Elantra, which is a key visual examination that could be used against Kohberger. Yet at the same time is saying it's not Kohberger. Could the judge and jury tell the difference between the alleged suspect's 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra and the 2015 Hyundai Elantra? Of course not, especially if Get a Clue is expanding the range from 2011 to 2020. The defense would tell you to kick rocks, you would hurt Kohberger, not help him. You see this fucker? He definitely couldn't spot a Ford Fusion at 4:07 a.m. as that vehicle circles Queen Road Apartments away from the highest visible region in surveillance. Powerpuff apparently is the person who either had access to that surveillance or obtained it from the person who had access. Some claim individuals paid for that surveillance, that's how it was obtained. If so, then the landlord has some explaining to do, because under no circumstances should they have sold surveillance to random people involving a murder investigation. Unless something needed to be covered up anyway, and that particular person had the editing skills to cover it up. I'm guessing the so-called FBI expert and their team of video forensic analysts are the culprits. Once that was done, then it was given to the, quote, middleman, that being the person that links the federal government to social media. In other words, a DC agent. Mind you, Get a Clue claims the so-called FBI expert identified a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra in surveillance, but he assumed it would be from the neighbor's security camera. Yet, there hasn't been any footage released of this so-called evidence. Not even a screenshot, similar to the gas station surveillance screenshot. You would think something tangible would have been released, even leaked, right? We need everyone to think about this very carefully. Look at this screenshot. This view of King Road would show the vehicle entering, turning on Queen Road, and proceeding to the victim's home. Again, this camera would show the alleged Kohberger entering, turning on Queen Road, and proceeding to the victim's home. Why hasn't this been released? If Kohberger was there, then just show he was there. We don't need claims that he was spotted by surveillance. Show the damn surveillance to back up your claims. There isn't any legal reason why this so-called evidence has been vaulted. And to magnify the suspicions surrounding this footage, a screenshot from the neighbor's security camera had been released. Who the hell released that? This is very important. When did that footage get released as well? Because whoever is dumping this out to social media has to be accounted for. I believe the neighbor's screenshot was released around the same time Kaylee's sister was publicly scrutinizing Moscow PD for getting the arrival time wrong. But that in itself was odd, because how would she know the time of arrival? Yet Moscow PD didn't know when they got the time from the so-called private, you know what, don't have time for that right now, it's nonsense. No, wait, let's go all the way back to that. It's now even more of a concern regarding the neighbor's security camera. Kaylee's sister stated, quote, I found neighbor's ring door camera footage to verify that the Uber driver took them home, unquote. The wording is key here. She stated she found ring door camera footage. How did you find this footage? This would mean it was social media, and you Well, found it. No one else had found it. Trust me, the true crime community would have already examined it. She couldn't say, quote, I viewed the Ring door camera footage because this means she had direct access to that footage from the next-door neighbor. And that raises a few key questions. The problem is this: the screenshot was released, which means the surveillance had been examined, and someone decided to dump out the screenshot of that security camera footage from that night. It was timed at 1:56 a.m. But if Kaylee's sister viewed this surveillance footage, then she had access to it, right? Now, if she had access to it, and yet it wasn't in connection to Moscow PD, this could be considered a, quote, compromise of the integrity of the investigation, right? Meaning she is viewing surveillance from the neighbor's security camera and then publicly speaking about it. Also, I find it odd that her time of arrival, based on viewing the footage, leads to a screenshot of that very footage being leaked, timed at 1:56 a.m. Now, if she had viewed this surveillance and was doing her own investigating, wouldn't she ask for a copy of the footage to examine the entire time frame of before, during, and after the murders? Who was physically there and who was potentially involved? Mind you, she stated she spotted the Uber driver drop the girls off. But, obviously, her intrigue doesn't end there, right? I mean, if you have access to that footage, surely you would spot the fucking white Hyundai Elantra entering the neighborhood as well, right? Wouldn't she want this to be publicly known that the killer was seen entering the neighborhood around 3:30 a.m.? What about the father? They are portraying themselves as fighting so hard to get justice. But if they had access to that neighbor's camera, then why haven't they publicly stated, quote, we spotted Koberger's vehicle driving into the neighborhood, unquote. None of them have stated they spotted Koberger entering the neighborhood. That's the guy, etc. Oh, because that would compromise the integrity of the investigation. Oh, there's a compromise in integrity of the investigation, but it's not what you think. See, the reason Kaylee's sister, nor father or mother, ever stated they spotted Koberger driving into the neighborhood by that security camera is because they would be lying. Koberger was never there, and if they stated they saw him when they didn't, they would essentially be framing Koberger right along with everyone else. You understand? But they're almost forced to say they spotted him in a way, because if Kaylee's sister claimed she viewed the girls coming back home from that neighbor's camera, we know she viewed the rest of the footage as well. From around 1:56 a.m. to approximately 4:30 a.m., she watched the footage, viewing each and every vehicle that entered the neighborhood. So, why no claim she spotted a suspect or even suspicious vehicles? She can't even mention spotting suspicious vehicles because it raises the obvious question. Did you spot the alleged suspect's vehicle as well in that surveillance? Now, bringing this all the way back around, there was no white Hyundai Elantra entering the neighborhood. Therefore, it was not a white Hyundai Elantra spotted in the Linda Lane surveillance. What does all this mean? We're trying to figure who was responsible for editing the surveillance, making it appear to be a white Hyundai Elantra. The person who leaked out the screenshot knew there wasn't a white Hyundai Elantra in surveillance, because if it was, that would have been released. The mainstream media would have been yapping about it. Everyone would see the alleged suspect's vehicle entering the neighborhood, preparing to commit the massacre. Like mentioned prior, if the white Hyundai Elantra is in the Linda Lane surveillance, then it has to be spotted by the neighbor's camera. There's only one way into the neighborhood. But for some mysterious reason, that neighbor's camera footage hasn't been leaked. We know why. The bigger issue here is that Kaylee's sister knows the truth and has kept quiet about it. Oh yes, she viewed the neighbor's security camera footage. She literally viewed every actions, vehicle, person, all spotted and heard by that camera. The only thing that suggests it was a white Hyundai Elantra is the Linda Lane surveillance, which Moscow PD couldn't identify. So we have the so-called FBI expert and Get a Clue, and others such as Gray Hughes, JLR, claiming to spot a white Hyundai Elantra in surveillance. They take the Linda Lane surveillance down after everyone has downloaded it, and Get a Clue spots a white Hyundai Elantra in surveillance. But oh, he's fighting for Koberger, yes, trying to email Ann Taylor, trying to get the truth out there. It's not Koberger's vehicle, he has the proof. Oh, how this guy always finds himself in a corner. In one of those Substack posts, he mentioned how providing Ann Taylor with the Linda Lane surveillance, timed around 2 a.m., of screams heard, would not help her, right? Oh, Ann would say, oh, okay, that proves my client wasn't there. But yet, imagine emailing Ann Taylor the evidential analysis of the Linda Lane surveillance and telling her, quote, "It's not Kohberger, Miss Taylor. Based on my evidential analysis, I ranged this white Hyundai Elantra from 2011 to 2020. So it's not Kohberger, please, listen to me." Ann Taylor would respond in saying, "It's get a clue, right, sir? Can you please explain how that exonerates my client if you are including Mr. Kohberger's vehicle in that year range? It's a 2011 to 2013 model, but thank you for your help. But we're doing just fine. You don't need to worry." Then Get a Clue goes on a tirade complaining how Ann Taylor didn't utilize this evidential analysis. If you're not getting the clue here, Get a Clue is pretending to fight for Kohberger while trafficking in the true crime community as a DC agent. Okay, if anyone knows who or where this Powerpuff individual or individuals are, let us know, because they are apparently the source of that surveillance being leaked out. This is important. It may end up being the only surveillance used as supporting evidence. Once again, this is the only surveillance that has been released. The neighbor's security camera footage will never be released. So, in court, the prosecution will without a doubt use that very Linda Lane surveillance, spotting a white Hyundai Elantra, even tracing an outline of the window bank as Get a Clue did. And it doesn't matter that Get a Clue claims the so-called FBI expert spotted a 2011 to 2013 model because they changed it to 2011 to 2016, and that's the year range of Kohberger's vehicle. Get a Clue is agreeing with the FBI and alluding to them framing Kohberger at the same time. You don't accept anything the FBI says. That's how we know he is either ignorant to the corruption of the FBI, which seems unlikely, or he is simply running around double-talking to confuse his audience. The prosecution will present it as their exhibit to the judge and jury, matching that vehicle with the alleged timestamp of Kohberger's path, and in combination with the alleged DNA at the crime scene, Kohberger is guilty. But Get a Clue doesn't think so, right? He is claiming it's not Kohberger's vehicle, it's a 2011 to 2013 model, and also a 2011 to 2020 year range at the same time. Translation: I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, basically contradicting everything he presents, which is why we slated him a wolf in sheep's clothing, which the wolf and blade analogy came into play. Think about it. The only surveillance released is the surveillance that will be used, without a doubt. That surveillance will be used, my friends. When Gray Hughes went on court TV so-called breaking that down, we knew that footage would be included. Framed with DNA in the home, and framed with a edited Hyundai Elantra in surveillance. That's their main attack. And to be honest, it will be very difficult to overcome that. It's the surveillance, not the DNA. We've stated this before. The surveillance is visible proof, while the DNA is unfounded from the public's eyes. But what the public eyes would see is a so-called white Hyundai Elantra creeping into the neighborhood in the Linda Lane surveillance. That places Kohberger in the neighborhood more so than the DNA found on a knife sheath. See, the defense can argue that, how it was obtained, etc., but what they will have a hard time debunking is a white Hyundai Elantra spotted at 4:05 a.m. That is the problem. As the saying goes, seeing is believing, my friends. The prosecution will present that segment of the Linda Lane surveillance, and of course the vehicle will match the description of Kohberger's. It's seen creeping around during the time frame the murders occurred, and Ann Taylor would not be able to object to what is being presented. The jury examines what's being displayed in the surveillance and come to the conclusion Kohberger was there that night. See, the DNA is questionable and can be argued. But the surveillance spotting the white Hyundai Elantra, which is the defendant's make, model, and color, would be the determining factor. You can thank Gray Hughes, Get a Clue for tracing an outline of the vehicle, and Powerpuffs for all conspiring to produce that vehicle for the prosecution. It was so-called leaked out to prove Kohberger was there, and that's what the prosecution is banking on, more so than the DNA. That places Kohberger physically in the neighborhood by way of visual evidence. That's damaging to the defense. Ann Taylor can only argue that it doesn't prove it's Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra, which would be deemed desperation on her behalf to deny the so-called visual evidence against her defendant. The jury would be convinced Kohberger is guilty. As far as the other so-called vehicles spotted, the time is in question. Similar to the Kanika Jenkins case, time was edited in certain surveillance. There were time gaps, cut times, you name it, What if the vehicle spotted circling was actually 4:30 a.m. to 5:07 a.m.? We don't truly know because the footage was leaked 7 months after a suspect was arrested, and it makes more sense that Get a Clue spotted a Ford Fusion with this time frame, you see? That would be the unmarked cruiser, of course, still circling the apartments just an hour ahead in real time. We leave with this to ponder. Kohberger faces the death penalty due to the Linda Lane surveillance showing a white Hyundai Elantra creeping into the neighborhood. That's basically how it would all unfold, but the chaos is here to expose it, and hopefully it will have an impact. This is the Chaos Sector.